So I'm sure we've all had an experience at one point or another in our lives of being in the flow, being in the zone, being in that state where we're not really thinking, we're not analyzing, we're not necessarily aware of past, present, and future and self and other and all of these extrapolations and concepts, but more so we're present with what we're doing. Our mind is calm, our body is calm, and we're really accomplishing things easily and effectively without necessarily knowing how or why. We're just doing and acting and being because we're so submersed and immersed in that present moment. And this is classified as a peak state of human consciousness and human potential. So the question is, what does that mean? What does the flow state really mean? What does it look like? How can we live there more? And how can we remove the things that get in the way? So that's what we're going to do in this video, is look at this state of consciousness, because if we understand the importance of this, then that's oftentimes a stepping stone to really allowing it to fill our lives up more deeply. What I mean by that specifically is understanding the phenomena of state-dependent memory. Meaning when we're in a certain state, we have access to a certain set of memories and beliefs and thoughts and behavioral patterns. And we don't have access to a whole other set of beliefs and thoughts and all these different things. So we can ask ourselves, well, if I'm in the flow state, what state-dependent memories and actions and beliefs do I have access to that I don't normally have access to? And if those are peak things, if those are higher, more functional, more effective things, then what would the impacts of that be for my life? Meaning if I lived there more and I accessed more of those things, how could I grow? How could those things expand? How could those things fill up more of my life and allow me to create more things that I want to create? Just some things to think about as we get going. So really, what is the flow state? What does it really look like? What is it really about? On one hand, we can understand that it really comes down to the smooth and relaxed flow of our nervous system, and the smooth and relaxed flow of the energy channels and energy flow in our bodies. So we can understand that in a couple of different ways, and some pretty obvious and some pretty intuitive ways. First is understanding that, well, we are mostly water. 70-80% depending on what things you read, sometimes more, sometimes less. But really, if you look at our body, it's really a series of tubes. You know, our circulatory system, our lymphatic system, our nervous system, it's all basically water-based. Sure, there's oils and such mixed in, but that's just really another form of water when we really break it down. So we can look at that in sort of the obvious sense. And if we've ever studied ancient philosophies from different Asian cultures, there's always this metaphor and this imagery of water, of being like water and flowing like water, and nature flows like water, and nature is, doesn't resist things, and on and on and on. All these things are going back to water and using water as the imagery. Well, if we take these two things into account and then apply our third example, which is just paying attention to how we feel around certain bodies of water. Meaning if you live by a big lake, or you live by an ocean, or another large body of water that has tides and waves, if you go out there and everything is really calm and that lake or that body of water is settled, oftentimes walking around that will cause the person, the human being, the nervous system to relax as well, to become calm and become more peaceful and more smooth and flowing. Meaning instead of our thoughts being all over the place and all chaotic, they're more even and regular. Our breathing becomes even and regular, and everything starts to come into sort of a symbiosis or a harmony, or really a resonance with each other, or an entrainment, I guess would be a better word. Yet if there's like really choppy, chaotic water, oftentimes people really don't feel the same pull to want to be around it, because it makes them feel a bit choppy or a bit chaotic, because that's just sort of the vibe or the atmosphere or the air that water is giving off. So from those three things, we can see the first way of really understanding the flow state and how that relates and manifests in our bodies and also the natural world. The next thing we can look at is, again, using the imagery of water. and looking at the mind and using a little bit of the imagery that I just touched on. Meaning, most of the time, most people's mind is like, if we used a waveform to illustrate it, it would be really high, really low, really high, really low, and all these chaotic, discordant patterns that don't really have any entrainment or, harmony or sort of evenness to them or balance to them. But if you study the brain of someone who meditates and you use brainwave and, EEG machines, you notice their brainwaves are very smooth and balanced and harmonious and symmetrical. So we can use the imagery of water again of saying when we're in that symmetrical, harmonious, balanced, calm state, it's basically like a calm pool of water. And that can be the natural state of our mind, but then all of a sudden we have a really stressful thought, or really something that makes us upset, and then we basically take a big boulder and drop that in the water, and then all the water shoots everywhere, and all of a sudden the waves and everything in that water gets really distorted and really disturbed, and it's really choppy, and then it takes a while for that to eventually settle back down. So when we're in that flow state, we're experiencing really the same phenomena as that calm body of water. We're experiencing the same phenomena as our mind becoming like that calm body of water, whereas everything's smooth and balanced and harmonious. Which again goes to the third point, which is fluid movement patterns. Hence that name, hence that adjective, fluid. People say, oh, he's so fluid. They move so fluidly. They move so smoothly. It's so amazing to watch. People say that about great athletes, great performers. People say that about, great high-level Tai Chi or martial arts practitioners, talk about fluidity and smoothness and ease and comfort and really a sense of effortlessness, which again is the flow state we're talking about, and again is referring to the whole water metaphor that we're carrying along here. We're saying fluid movements. Well, when you're moving your arm, what are you moving? You're moving fluids because that's what we're full of. We're full of all these different fluids. So in that same way, we can observe ourselves and observe our movement patterns. Most people move in a very chaotic, disorganized, unharmonious, very ineffective, with very little structural integration, very little actual body awareness and body symmetry. Meaning, if someone is going to reach up for something from the cabinet, people are like doing this and reaching and like crimping their whole neck and getting their whole body and throwing themselves out of balance, when instead they could just reach up and grab it and really move from a deeper core of their body and keep everything in a natural alignment. Or when people sit down, people don't come and then gradually sit down. People just plop themselves around, getting in and out of their car, getting in and out of their bed, getting out of couches. And what does that do to the body? Well, the body is fluid, so it's basically just putting a whole bunch of stress and tension on the body. It's like having a calm body of water and then throwing a boulder in it and disturbing the flow of that water. And then we wonder why people are stressed and tension and anxiety, because, well, you're starting to see a little bit of how this all connects. But when we're in a flow state, our movement patterns become more fluid. We start to become actually more in our body, more grounded, rooted, centered, and stabilized, so that we naturally move more fluidly. And people will oftentimes be clumsy and absent-minded, but when they're in a more harmonious flow state, those things don't happen. People might drop something but then catch it, or almost knock over a cup and then catch the cup before it even falls over. And those are very common experiences for people who live in more of a calm, relaxed flow state. So now that we understand some images and metaphors and ways to understand this state, let's talk about, well, how and why, and some methodologies, and really some things that get in the way. Well, obviously things that get in the way are computers, cell phones, and all of these modern things that we all have. Meaning they can get in the way, they can be huge sources of stress, or we can use them efficiently and effectively to not really stress ourselves out. But people are, doing one thing, they're over here working on the computer with the TV on, watching a TV show, and they're also listening to music, and they're working on the computer, and then they're texting, and they're working on the computer, and they're texting, and then they go on Facebook for a little bit, and then they go back to this, and they go back to that, and they go back to this, and go back to that, and then the phone rings, and they go answer it, and they go do this, and all over the place. There's really no flow or fluidity to the actions. Many people spend all day in that state, which again is obviously going to impede the flow state and flow in the body and in the nervous system, because if we used a waveform as an image, that's a really chaotic, disjointed, not very harmonious waveform. But if we can learn to be more present and relaxed and start to single task and really be focused and not do so many things at once and scatter our attention all over the place, then that can allow us to obviously start to be more relaxed. So from there, negative thoughts and beliefs and all of these things are impedances to a way, or impediments. As I mentioned earlier with the illustration of dumping a boulder in a big bowl of water or in a big body of water. So then how can we start to get in the flow state more often? Well, it hopefully is implicit and explicit at this point because we've gone through so many different examples. But to take it deeper and to understand it and be just clear, really learning to smooth and relax the flow of our nervous system and of the energy systems in our body will put us more and more in a flow state. That's the general sense and really the big picture. Now we can do that through meditation or breathing or yoga or massage or body work modalities or internal martial arts or Tai Chi, Qigong, visualizations, walking in nature, walking by bodies of water. We can do that through love, through being around certain people, through intimate relationships, through music, through playing music, through doing art, through gardening. All of these different methodologies can allow us to start to become more smooth and fluid in our nervous system and experience more and more of that flow state. So really what it comes down to is just having a solid foundation of these activities that fill up a decent portion of our everyday life, and something that allows us to build the foundation and start to gain positive momentum and positive motivation in the areas of these things in our life that we're wanting to manifest. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully we've understood a bit more about the flow state, what it is, what it looks like, how it feels, how it looks like in our body, how it looks like in the external world, how these two things relate, and also maybe generating some questions, some bigger picture questions on how we might start to cultivate this in our own lives and start to look at some of the consequences of that, meaning what would happen, what would change, how would I feel different, how would this help me, how would this hold me back, and on and on and on, just really exploring these ideas and allowing them to manifest and come to fruition in our own lives. Because if you've ever been in the flow state, you know it feels better than not being in that state. You know you get more done in less time and everything is just a bit more effortless and more enjoyable and more pleasurable. So why would you not want to be there? Why would you not want to invest the time and the energy to cultivate that as a skill set, cultivate that as a reflex, and then live in that space? Because you can, because it is possible, because many people have done it before, many people are doing it now, and hopefully many people will do it in the future. So that's the flow state and how to live in the flow. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.